We're delighted today to have Terry Rowles with us. Terry is a good friend of mine, although we haven't seen each other for quite some time. Terry and I go way back when I started my journey with Leadbetter back in '99. Terry was already working out at the academy in Austria and was a massive help to me and very influential in my learning and my journey. So Terry, thanks for joining us today.
Great pleasure, Stu. I have to say, absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah, so I mean, Terry, you've obviously moved on from Leadbetter. Just a couple of years after I started, went up to Vienna, worked at a club there, and then headed out to the States, and have obviously gone on to huge things since you've moved over there. And I know where I remember working with you, and you were always reading books, you were always networking, you were always researching, looking at things. You always had that inquisitive mindset, and I was always fascinated by how much you had like lots of things on the go. But it'd be great to tell the team here or bring to life a little bit of your journey from then when I got to know you to where you are now.
Yeah, thanks, Stu. It was a great pleasure to work with you guys. We had a great team. We had Stuart Morgan and you and obviously Malcolm. It was a great teacher and also a great manager, good people person.
Yeah.
I think, if you look back, I mean, probably still now, David obviously was the top teacher in the world. And I think as a consequence, he attracted people that were probably more ambitious than average. So, it was pretty fertile ground in terms of the people that we hung around with. And, I'm a kind of obsessive person, believe it or not. And so I think that context at that time, is probably very fertile for me to, to learn. I think, it's very exciting to join the academy at that time. And, relative to everything else that's available in the late 90s, I mean, it was just such a good opportunity to learn from the, from the top of the tree, as it were. So I think, just the combination of, I definitely have an inquisitive mind, but I think just the kind of excitement of having an opportunity to be in that environment, I think those two things together is the opportunity to, take your chance because it's presented to you almost. Then, I think it, in hindsight, probably was always very inquisitive. I literally used to be able to remember like every swing tip from every magazine when I was a kid, and so it probably was already in there. It's just the context of being in that academy and having the opportunity to teach dawn till dusk bad golfers. I mean, you were forced to kind of self-reflect and try and get better at all of the aspects that are learning. I think when you look back, the Leadbetter Academy at that time was one of the only places that was really talking about kind of a holistic approach to teaching. So in terms of all the different plates that were spinning, it was, there was the fitness component, obviously the coaching component, like the mental piece, the swing stuff that we obviously were very well trained in from Paddy. But I think even Paddy, who was our director of, training at that time, was encouraging us to read different things, do different things to become a better instructor. So I think the whole environment there, it didn't all come from David, or David was the, we get to watch David and this and that. But I think the overall environment was very conducive to learning. And if you're a learning oriented person, it probably, spurred you to try and get better at what you do. So that was really, I would say, like an accelerant in terms of wanting to learn. And I think this is the lesson that, I can pass on to other teachers. We were kind of lucky to have that environment, I would say. And with you and Stuart and, we had Jason Floyd. Who's the other Geordie? Like football. Anyway, whatever. But we had a bunch of guys there that, generally wanted to do better. It was a very difficult, it was hard work, right? I mean, we were working in, 40 Celsius and dawn till dusk, 6 days a week and what have you. But I think the fact that we had a good team and, we did the teach-ins on a regular basis. So our kind of skin in the game was that we wanted to improve our career and get better. And, we did that through obviously working very hard, but having the teach-ins, which was cool. So then from there, you know, so that really opened the concept. Okay, holistic, what does that mean? You know, so I went off after Leadbetter. You know, I got a job whereby, you know, I was basically employed for the year, but really only had to work like 7 months. So, you know, that left me with a bunch of time in the winter, and that really spurred my, you know, learning cycle even further, because I was able to travel and, you know, go and see different people in different fields. So probably for about 5 years there, I was obviously teaching and doing, you know, teaching some really good players in Austria, Bernd, and,
yeah,
you know, Tommy and some of the guys that did pretty well. And, but then, you know, I'd be off learning about fitness from you know, Paul Chek, who at that time was one of the leading fitness experts, or, you know, I did a very in-depth 5 years with a guy called John Grinder, who founded NLP. You know, so if you wanted to get better at coaching, that was kind of the direction to go in at that time. So, you know, so I really almost had like 3 things going on in terms of getting better at teaching golf, getting better at, you know, the mental side and coaching golf, and then the fitness side. And to your point, my head was like spinning at that point, knowing how to use it all, right? So I had inquisitiveness and education, but I didn't really know how to put into a system. And then, you know, I came over here and moved to San Francisco, which is not, interestingly, it's a great golf market, but there's not a lot of places to, you know, be like a great golf instructor. So I opened a indoor school downtown, which really, you know, when you have an indoor place, it really leans heavily on technology. And so at that time, it's probably about 2005, 6, you know, KVS came out. So that was the first, you know, I was very early in the adoption of kind of motion capture. And now for anybody out there, it's like, well, how do you use motion capture? Well, you actually have to understand the body, and you have to understand how to describe the body. And so I was already, you know, well established in that field. I mean, I'd recommend for anybody, you know, ideally you should probably become a personal trainer, to be honest with you, because, you know, you're asking people to move differently every time you make a swing change. Yeah. And if you really don't understand the body, then it makes it very, very difficult. And, you know, if you use motion capture, it in theory, it really doesn't make any sense other than you know, copying what someone else does. You know, oh, everyone else is doing this X factor thing, let me do that. But you're not really like owning the information flow. So, you know, that was really, for me, it was a huge piece to have the background of, you know, basically being a certified trainer through Paul Chek, who was a very stringent, you know, teacher, just the same as, you know, David and Patty and John Grinder were. And so technology then was the thing that kind of glued it all together for me. So after that, I think I got a TrackMan and started to see, you know, the ball flight numbers and this and that. And then after that, I upgraded the KVS to a 3D motion capture system, which was called AMM, which is what, you know, TPI was using. Phil Cheatham, good friend of mine who I'm working with now, still was the kind of creator of. And so you can imagine, you know, I've got all these different fields and then all the different information streams, and, you know, how do you make sense of it? Well, the technology eventually, after you started using it, made sense. I think there's a technology uptake, which is somewhat damaging to the teaching process. You know, okay, give me that launch monitor. Okay, what does it do? It measures things. Okay, well, what do the best players do? Well, on average, they do that. And so you say, well, okay, why don't you do that? You know, from a motion capture standpoint or from a ball flight standpoint, initially, you know, you look at the average, and that doesn't necessarily make many people better. It makes you better able to explain things, but not necessarily apply them to the individual. And then I started to see, you know, patterns, very predictable patterns related to kind of the grip and the face, let's say, in the TrackMan, and also in the motion capture. So then I started to do some testing with those two things to try and isolate the effect of the grip on the golf swing. And so that was kind of my, you know, seed of 10 years of kind of grip research, let's say. So, you know, we started to see kinematic sequence changes, started to see, you know, attack angle, spin, path changes with grip. So we did some testing and, you know, did a very rudimentary thing on the grip, and we defined what the grip was, and we could sort of see the effect of the grip on the golf swing at that time. And I started teaching at the Olympic Club then, which is a great spot in San Francisco. And, you know, generally was starting to teach some really good players. So I moved to Arizona, where there's a lot more good players. Yeah, and it just kind of blossomed from there. I think, you know, if you look at that 10 years after I left Leadbetter, it was very much, you know, information in. You know, I learned about the body, learned about how to coach, you know, mental games, stuff like that. Again, I mean, you know, we're talking about, I did a postgraduate degree in NLP, right? It wasn't like I was just, you know, watching a few videos on Instagram and then I became an expert. And then, you know, like I said, once all that kind of merged together, you know, using the technology, using my education, then I was lucky enough to run into Mike Adams, who, interestingly, in our teachings, we read Laws of the Golf Swing, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember.
That was actually one of my favorite. Yeah, so that was like 99, 2000 when we read his book, and it was pretty interesting, right? So it was levers, leverage, arc, and width. So basically, he was saying there's different types of swings for different people, which he doesn't really use that stuff now, but you know, he's developed ways to measure the body, which kind of predict, you know, the nature of the swing from there. And so once we got together, it was interesting because, you know, we didn't know each other very well, and he asked me to present at his teaching event. So I presented the grip research that I'd done, which showed, you know, people grip it differently. Then, you know, the club moves differently, the ball flight is different, you know, the spin is different on the ball, contact point on the face is different. And, you know, within the body, these are the things that you're going to see, you know, body motion differences, rotation differences, slide differences. And so I presented that as even funnier. It's like, well, how long are you going to talk for? Like 20, 30 minutes? And this was like, let's say it's on a Tuesday. And he goes, oh, no, you've got all morning. It was like on Wednesday, right? And I'm not used to presenting all that much at that time. So I managed to squeeze out 3 hours. And the funny thing was that, you know, it was pretty much in line with what he did, and then added, you know, more detail to what he was doing. So in, you know, Mike's created the, you know, the filter whereby, you know, he suggests this is why we swing like we do in terms of, you know, body shape, dimensions, nature of movement, things like that. And then he and I have done a really, you know, great collaboration in terms of filling in the details over the years, you know, in terms of predicting swing styles. I had an LPGA Tour player come for a lesson, for example, and I did the measurements. So Mike does these, you know, 6 measurements before you, and I do these measurements before you teach. And I now have created a software program which gives you, you know, your TrackMan numbers, your ground reaction force profiles, whether you should work more on rotation, launch, or horizontal. And then it gives you all the swing shapes. So, you know, are you deep? Are you, you know, less deep? Are you flat, steep? You know, club across the line, club like, you know. So we can basically predict without seeing the person swing what the swing is going to look like, which is pretty good science. And so this LPGA Tour player came in and I said, wow, you have to have a really flat swing, right? So she had, you know, short arms and a strong grip, both of which, so the short arms make the hands go deep early, and then the grip makes the shaft rotate and get flat. So she was deep and flat. And she said, oh yeah, I got like one of the flattest swings in the world. And then, you know, that's how I played when I played really well. But she'd been working for, you know, a number of years to become more upright and this and that. So it was not really matched to her style. So that's good. I don't always do it that way. I sometimes actually build rapport before I tell them what they're going to do. But sometimes just for fun, I'll guess, you know, what this swing's going to look like, and it's right on. So it's very, very exciting that yeah, we're continuing to you know, build more detail into the system, and you know, we got a book coming out on that soon. So, you know, through the years, I've taught a bunch of good players. You know, right now we have some really interesting projects. You know, if you look at why a swing is what it is, I mean, you know, from a teaching standpoint, we're better off, you know, dealing with the swing at the point in which they, you know, so for example, if you're going to affect the release of the club, you know, the way the hands are on the club and the way the arms move is the first point of contact to that part of the world. And then if you want to create some more power, you know, probably differences in path, you can look at the lower body. So So there's a great level of expertise in how to use force plates now, I would say, and how the grip and release match up. But between the the knees and the elbows, there's a big black box which is motion capture. And in our experience, it's almost like the body will do certain things to accommodate what the hands and the feet need to do. And so motion capture has not really been utilized effectively yet, because there is no one way to do it, right? Like you got like a Colin Montgomery is almost like leaning back towards the target, or Matt Wolf, and then you got Zach Johnson, who's much more behind the ball, and there's a whole bunch of different things in between. But now we have a motion capture project going on, because I think force plates are pretty widespread now and successfully used by some. And then obviously the launch monitor is very successfully used. But the motion capture is the next thing. The problem with motion capture is always that it was in a studio, very artificial environment.
Yeah.
But what we're doing now is we're creating an app with this company called Sportsbox AI. We were just doing some captures last weekend in Arizona where, we put people in the 3D motion capture suit, but there'd be multiple cameras filming it. And so we get the ground truth, which is the actual measurements, and then the AI, using computer vision. So those cameras can then learn those numbers. So in the future, what we're going to have is an app where you can film, your student or yourself, and it'll give you like gears, like numbers instantaneously and on the golf course. And, and it has, eventually we'll have AI coach, which is, I'm developing behind the scenes in order to take those variables and tell you which ones to change in order to create better output. So that's the future of golf instruction, and that's really, pretty exciting, I would say.
Yeah.
So that's about where we're at right now.
Yeah, a big journey, but really exciting to kind of see where it is. And obviously, I know, obviously, following you on social media, and we haven't maybe chatted as much as we could have over the years, but see a little bit of the journey you've gone on. And how much do you think the world of motion capture, Terry, in the world that you've been in, and kind of measurements, like you say, in the work that you do with Mike about, wingspan and different things, how much do you think that's evolved in the last couple of years, or how much have you seen it evolve in your work with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would, obviously I've known Mike for about 5 years, and my teaching has changed significantly since I met Mike. But, what we have in common with each other is we think the same. So if you think about teaching, the kind of the responsibility that you have to the student is to make a change that is, kind of ethical and responsible in terms of their performance. So ethical means that you didn't just work on it yourself, or you didn't pluck it off the internet and you're testing it out on them. And accountable means that, okay, if I change this thing, then it's going to make the ball do that. You should be able to predict that before you do it, right? That's really
Absolutely
where we're at. And so we call that a deterministic model, and that's what we're working on right now. So, it's still evolving, right? I mean, so it's changed a lot because of technology. But technology initially has an effect on 25% of the population positive, and 50% probably neutral, and then 25% is really bad, because there are no outliers, is what we say. And if you're Jim Furyk and they develop a technique which says you should be on plane, which is a video camera, then he's going to get worse, right? Versus everyone says, oh, you've got to have an upright swing to hit it further, then Matt Kuchar can't have a career. So what we're trying to do is and is continuing to evolve, but is grounded in using technology and measuring things. So over the last 5 years, we're making more and more sense. I mean, the big jump in the last 3 years, let's say, was using force plates. So I mean, if you and categorizing force plates in a way that you can optimize it for each individual. So we've worked with probably about 5 different biomechanists in the background, working out how that all works. But it's not that sort of sounds like the biomechanists are coming up with it, but it's really an interaction. This is another thing that aspiring teachers need to understand, is your intuitions are valid, right? As a teacher, what you're seeing, and digging out the dirt as a teacher is valid, and you need to go with some self-confidence to an expert and say, this is what I'm seeing, how can you explain that? As well as saying, how do you explain it back to me, right? So we needed all these different biomechanists because they all have a slightly different perspective, but we know for sure that if we do this and this, something is going to change. So we need to use our experience as golf teachers and the education of the biomechanists to make it happen. And so that's, so I think a lot of teachers, they look at the, Instagram or what have you, and they see an quote unquote expert, explaining how something works. And, the theory of it, is true, but, in the practice, the golf teachers are out there, doing their best to make people better. And that data point is also valid. So anyway, to answer that question, I think, over the last 5 years, things have changed. Some things remain the same, but every year it becomes more efficient. We chop a bit of fat off, as it were, and get to the point much more quickly. So I think, the process of analysis and application is getting much tighter. And, for the reason being that I said deterministic model basically is, swing path is that, club face is that, loft is that, attack angle is that. What can I do to change those immediately? Yeah. Versus the abstraction of, you have to be, a bowed left wrist, and you have to shallow it, and you have to, cover it, or whatever it is. But how does that immediately deal with the ball flight issues that your client is having? And and secondarily, is that sustainable over a long period of time? So I think the what we're doing with this motion capture, sports box, is in the background, we're working really hard to understand what variables really affect. Someone has a slice, what is it that makes the ball slice? Well, obviously it's the left path or face right of the path. Okay, what motion capture variables are most highly correlated to that?
Yeah.
And then so as you do that, you can start to, look beyond the noise, which is like an individual swing style, and start to, go right into the heart of the issue and fix it. And, the swing won't necessarily look significantly different, but the performance will be significantly different. And, then you have to deal with the people that want to do something other than what they're designed to do, which is always a bit of a challenge. It's like you're the best drawer that ever hit, or let's say, I think Rory right now, I think Rory is not built to hit those swooping hooks, right? But he basically plays a game that is, it's a preference that he does that. But I would say if he were to tighten up his ball flight, it would be a lot better for him. But I'm sure he's going to do that with Pete, whose style I think pretty much matches what, in my opinion, Rory needs. So that could be good.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Yeah,
money on Rory for the Masters, I think.
There you go. Terry's called it. Yeah, Gavin, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, let's move away from the boring stuff and talk about the kids. So, teaching young kids is a balance, isn't it? I think, because you have to do just enough so that they're playing well enough to enjoy the game in the present, but you also have to be doing enough to give them tools for the future. But I was actually keen to get your thoughts on, and we're talking 5 to 12-year-olds here, but what we do with the grip for kids. I mean, I guess there's a fairly obvious answer, but I'm keen to hear your thoughts on maybe some of the work that you've done with kids and their grips.
Well, I mean, as hopefully you guys know, we do all this research on grips. Left hand is more matched up to their pivot style. So, kids have usually got a very dynamic lower body action. So I'm pretty keen for, generally speaking, that kids have a stronger left hand grip on a right-handed golfer. But the right hand is how you control the face. It's very clear in the data. So, we test. I mean, so, I always test the kids. They change faster than adults who basically don't change. And so I think, it's your responsibility to test their trail arm action. So, for example, if you wonder what that is, you can just take your right hand grip on the club only and try, a strong grip, try a normal grip and a weak grip, let's say, and just do some swings like chest high to chest high. One of them, the face will be very, stable through impact. Stable as in you're swinging it, but it's not, flipping over or staying open. If you're strong, for some people, it'll flip closed. For some, it'll stay square. So you just swing it and see which grip works for them. And you can do that as the first thing you do every day, right? And so as a consequence, we call it offense or defense. If you've got a good grip, you can start to build speed into your swing because you're not trying to control the face with the swing, right? Whereas if you have a poor grip, you need to go on defense. You need to do some swing-related things. You might have to slide or, hold the angle excessively long or whatever it is, but you're adding breaks into the system. So, you can do something simple like that. I would, when we used to do groups for Leadbetter, we'd do generic drills. I would call that one of the generic drills, is move your right hand around the grip until it feels like you can swing and the face will be delivered squarely. And that's where your grip should be. And they should know that. I get tour players to do that. I'll get them to, every Monday, I'll get them to hit balls with a weaker grip than usual, a stronger grip than usual, and their grip. And, be really honest, athletically honest, that if they just swing with 0 swing thoughts, one of those grips is probably going to hit it straighter than the other one. And it usually ends up in this normal place. But, you could go and play like I did yesterday. I played in 30 miles an hour, wind at probably about 10 degrees Celsius. I was hitting a lot of punch shots, and that might just change your technique a little bit, right? And so we always start with a grip because it has the most downstream effects. But I think that's the way I would do it. If I was you guys, I'd encourage kids to test once a week. You can test them once a week, but to ignore the grip is unethical for the number of effects that it has.
Yeah, sure. What's your view then on teaching a grip according to a preferred shot shape or shape of shot, using the grip to help create a shape of shot?
Well, that's a really interesting one. So I've tested probably 200 tour players, and 2 of them use their grip to shape their shots, and 198 use their aim. So think about that. It's kind of interesting. I mean, you could do it. I mean, I think for kids, it's all about building up a database of experience. So, I mean, there's no reason. So I like contrast training, whereby you give them different experiences. Part of the problem with golf is that the only thing people want to do is hit perfect shots. Whereas if you'd say, okay, let's hit 5 balls with a strong grip, see what happens. Hit 5 balls with a weak grip, what happens? Let's hit 5 balls. So you give them the tools to be able to fix themselves, but you're not trying to make them hit perfect shots, right? You're actually just giving them an experience. And let's assume, and I would say this, Mike and I both teach the same sequence without telling each other to, but it's just the most effective sequence that we do grip first and then release in swing direction and attack angle. They kind of flow in that order. So if you, intentionally give them a bad grip and see what happens, give them a bad grip, see what happens, then they become self-directed in terms of, what, that made a big difference. I think the grip's a really important thing. Or else, I think the way that people do it, the problem with gripping differently is that, you need a different release, right? And so you could do, let's say somebody has a, predisposed to having a weak grip like me, and I grip it strong and I hook it. So my, bad history was to hook it. And then you say, okay, in order not to hook it, I held on too much. So I'll slide and hold. And you say, Terry, the secret of golf is a weaker grip. So I weaken my grip and I still slide and hold and I block cut it. Like, that isn't better. Where, which is sometimes with kids, you can only get one point across, right? So what I'll usually do is I'll have them fix the release, start hooking it, and then use a grip to fix the release because it's a stronger kind of motion. So I would definitely put it very, very high in my curriculum. I would make kids do contrast training and inherently understand the effect of the grip on their ball, because as we all know, just as golf teachers, without any of the research we've done, if you have a strong grip, you're going to have side bend and slide, and you have a weak grip, you're probably going to hang back and throw the club. And that is going to change because the driving force of the human being playing golf is that they want to see the ball go to the target. And if they don't do that, they're embarrassed and they lose balls and they, don't win the tournament and the parents are mad at them and, stuff like that. So it's like there's an inherent need for the player to play the game well. And if you don't give them a good grip, then they have to basically, butcher something together. And so, so in your business, I would be not necessarily in the business of teaching them quote unquote perfect grip, but giving them enough experiences that it becomes obvious that they should probably have a good grip. Now, the left-hand grip is much more about creating speed. If you give them a weak left hand at a very young age, then they're really just going to be swinging their arms at it. It's very, very difficult for them to really use the ground because the more dynamic the lower body becomes, then it's what we call a face opener. We have a series of face openers and closers that will be in the book. But lower body action is a face opener, right? So anytime the body is accelerating, it makes it very hard for the arms to pass the body and the club face to release. There needs to be a deceleration in the lower body for that to happen, right? So if you have a weak grip, which is a face opener, and you have a accelerating lower body of two face openers, then it's very difficult for them to play golf, and they'll shut down in one swing. And so like I say, I think for the kids, I would encourage strong left hands in order that they can create speed, and the right hand that they can feel that they can release the club, in an uninhibited way, and that enables it. So when we change grips, for example, in regular golfers, they can gain 5 miles an hour just by unrestricting their swing. And then we use better lower body action to match that grip, and they gain another 5 miles an hour. So we're unheralded speed gainers, but we do it by fixing face to path and then speed.
Excellent. So Stuart will be with you tomorrow for that lesson, particularly.
You know what we call
I think it would be great, actually. It's cold and Rudy there.
The reason I didn't talk to him, by the way, for 20 years is because he always beats me. Unless I bring my alter ego, which is Up and Down Brill from Brazil, Stuart.
That's right.
It's cold and windy there, right, Terry? And you're playing golf later today, right?
It's not too cold. It's gonna be about 15 degrees and sunny today.
Okay, well, I hope it's really.
But it was cold and windy. It's not, it's not 25 degrees.
I'd just love for you to come back and report back to us tomorrow on your round of golf today with a severely weak grip, and let us know how you get on.
It would definitely be fading down the right side for me. It's a horrible feeling when it's too weak for me. It's just wipey and weak. Oof. So.
Perfect for Pebble Beach, I might add. Anyway. Still bitter. Bitter.
Terry, I think fantastic information there. Just we've always talked about as golf instructors, we know the importance of the grip, but to actually hear a little bit about the research that goes behind it in terms of actually understanding what the grip does. I mean, we all kind of know, but do we really know? And I think to your point earlier as well, talking about as coaches, we talk a lot about posture with people. We talk a lot about, pivots. David's always been massively into the pivot, as we all know, through the 3 Ps in the golf swing book, etc. But, do we really understand the body? And I think that the point you made really early on today was about, probably one of the best things you can do is go and learn to be a personal trainer, or go and research and really understand the body. Because if you look, nearly all lessons, we probably ask people to change the way they move in some way, shape or form, either stand to the ball different, tilt your hips a little bit different, spine a bit different, or how you kind of move your hips or your rib cage, etc. So, in terms of the research that you've seen behind all of that, how important would you say that is for like any instructor on this session today? If they feel as though, hold on, I maybe don't really think I understand the body, for you, would that be paramount?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say chances are they really don't. I think you have to, part of, I think there's two things you need to be successful. Number one is you have to be ambitious. I wouldn't consider myself to be successful, but I'm always trying to get better, right? And then the second part of it is you have to be self-aware. and know what your limitations are on an ongoing basis, right? So you have to be moving towards something, but you have to know honestly, am I there or not? And so, the question is, and that's a tricky one for instructors, is am I saying something that I know to be true, right? So if you talk to an actual scientist and you say, what do you know about this? And it's like, haven't seen the research, can't answer you, right? There's an honesty to that answer, right? Whereas, historically golf instructors have read it on the internet or they've seen it in a magazine and that's their truth. And they answer, oh yeah, of course, everyone knows it to be true. But, as I think it was Goebbels in the Second World War says, if you repeat a lie, many, many times, it becomes a truth. And so I think, what the golf instruction industry needs is people who are self-aware enough to say, do I know that to be true for sure? Or am I just repeating something that I heard? And that's a hard truth, for a lot of golf teachers. And, so the education around the body for me enabled me to communicate with biomechanists, because they find it very difficult to talk to golf teachers as a rule, because, we'll say something to be true, we'll say it in a way that doesn't mean anything, right? So you say the pivot, well, which part of the pivot? Are you talking about thoracic rotation? You're talking about pelvis translation, so each parts of the body can move in 6 different ways, let's say. And, pelvis rotation, you're talking about internal hip rotation, or we actually talking about the pelvis, so just being impeccable with your words even gives the person a better opportunity to actually understand and become better. And I can tell everybody that, through working hard at the education part of it, my golf lessons are so easy now. Like, there was zero strain on me to come up with this magic answer, because I work through truths and data, as opposed to, oh, I hope this, idea that is out there is the idea that this person needs. And that's even at the highest level, to be honest with you. And so I think it's not a debate whether, I think I interviewed Kevin Kirk the other day, who I really respect. He's another guy that has done a really good job of having self-awareness, of saying, you know what, I don't know how to make people practice better, for example. So he went and found the guy who knew the most about sports practice. Like Stuart Morgan, for example. We can say Stuart has done an unbelievable job of becoming a specialist in that field, right? But he's not taking like an edutainment book, whatever anyway, so one of like a Malcolm Gladwell book, right? So, which is very diluted science stroke entertainment, and using that as a golf teacher, saying, I'm an expert on motor learning now because I read a Malcolm Gladwell book. And, that's not what it is. You need to understand enough that you can, like I say, communicate with experts. So Kevin, like I say, he basically went off and did education. But the thing that he recommended, there was a yoga book, which he found to be the most beneficial in terms of understanding anatomy. And I can send that to you afterwards. But that was a good suggestion. Personally, even just like Paul Chek's Eat, Move, and Be Healthy is a really good background to his system, which has been good over the years. But obviously things like TPI are out there, but they haven't given their followers the underlying education, right? So they say, well, do these tests, and if they fail, then do that outcome. But that's not making you understand the body, right? So you actually need to go, in order to get the most out of the TPI program, you actually need anatomy and physiology education to understand where they're coming from to say that in the first place. So being like TPI certified doesn't necessarily make you an expert of the body. It makes you able to use their system, but you're not able to think around in their system. And therefore, you're not able to understand how that then relates back to you as a golf instructor, and which piece is useful and which piece is, so which part is theirs and which part is yours, right? So for example, now, so just to kind of revert back and say, well, I understand the body, so I understand the restrictions of that person, but I'm not going to change it because I'm a golf teacher, right? I'm going to send them to somebody who's an expert. And, if you can communicate in a good way in terms of understanding the body, you can actually help the fitness person. But if you're not educated, you give them to a fitness person, and fitness people who are in golf love to teach the golf swing. So if you're not able to say, well, I need their shoulder rotation to improve in order that this and that improves, you go, okay, he's yours. So a lot of the reason I learned all this stuff is that I have control of the process still as a teacher, right? Because you start having, I mean, you remember Thomas Kogler? I mean, I felt that his, mental coach took too much of the process, right? So, if you send them out to, a lot of times you send them out to a mental coach and they go, everything is mental, but if you don't understand anything that they're doing, you're lost. And then you send them to a fitness coach and they say, everything is physical. You send them to a practice coach, everything's to practice. But you need, as an instructor, you're like the general doctor who's managing that information. You say, okay, I need you to do this, I need you to do that, I need you to do that. And there is still the swing component, but if you don't understand anything about the other fields, you can't be the person who controls that information flow. You're the victim of the system and not the controlling factor of it. And so, but we get people a lot better without changing their body, which is kind of the underlying philosophy behind kind of the golf fitness people, is that unless you change your body, you're not going to be able to play better golf. But if you have, like I say, kind of the deterministic model in your brain where you can change things and it immediately changes face to path and unblocks certain things, then you can get speed and control without, having to have 6 months off in the gym. But, does it help to get fitter and more effective in your body? Of course it does. But does it make you a better golfer? Not necessarily. I mean, look at Rory, he's gained speed and lost control. So, that's a technical piece. It's not a physical piece. Yeah. So anyway.
Absolutely great. Terry, we'll open it up. I know you're short for time. We've probably got 8-9 minutes here. So we'll open it up for a couple of questions. If anybody's got a question there. Not everybody at once.
Well, I think, the message is really, is just, I think, so I have players that come and want to be successful. They see the Ferraris and they see the glory of being a great player, right? It's like coaches, they see the recognition and the upside of being a coach. But the reality is, if you want to be a great coach to everybody, the message I want to put across is that you have to study all the pieces that make people get better at stuff, right? Which is learning, it's coaching, it's language, it's physiology. There's just a whole bunch of stuff under the surface, which it's taken me 20 years to be an overnight success.
Absolutely. No. Well, Terry, I mean, the information that I think you've helped us with today in terms of, your journey has brought to life kind of that's something that David's always embraced. And I know you recently interviewed David as well on Instagram, and you're good friends with him. And, his mantra has kind of always been that those who dare to teach must never cease to learn. And,
that's right.
One of the reasons, we used to do a teach-in every Friday at Bad Tatsmansdorf, and Gavin and I have this every Wednesday, is just to really try and provide that environment and the opportunity for everybody to really experience that, and hopefully just prompt a little bit of thought where people might go away and might go, you know what, I'm actually going to go and research this a little bit, and I'm going to take my instruction to another level. And I think you're exactly right in terms of being able to control the process for the students, because ultimately if you do hand them to the mental coach, the physical coach, and they've obviously got their agenda and they're trying to preempt kind of the thinking and saying everything's about physical, everything's about mental, the reality is the player's the one that suffers because they get lost in the middle of everything.
Well, and we're golf experts, right? And so we have to be the people that actually deal with the golf component. But hopefully, like I said, they're better mentally and physically, but then they still have to put it out on the golf course in a way that works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well,
just a final thought, 1 second. Just when I was interviewing David, it was phenomenal how much intuition and humanity that he uses. It was a terrific interview. So if you even just take communication as a variable, right? Say, okay, what is the process of golf? Well, you have to have an idea based on your education, and then you try and take it from your brain and put it in the other person's body. You know, David would be an elite master at that, and I think that's his skill. His greatest skill was, do you hear what he said? I said, well, David, how do you decide what swing to give these people? He's like, oh, I have a vision.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's really present, right? He's seeing it and he's feeling it, and he's and then I think his greatest attribute was taking that vision and you know, creating a compelling communication to the person in front of him that they really believed in and shared that vision with him. So it was actually really fun to interview him, because, you know, some of the directions he went in were not what I kind of anticipated, which was so if anybody gets to watch that Instagram, it's really an interesting insight into somebody that to this day is, you know, trying to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. He's said that a number of times to us as well about his kind of coaching. He says, you know, what do you decide what to do? And he says, well, actually, I'm quite fortunate. I just watch a player and I kind of see a vision for the end result, and I work back from that. And I've asked a lot of really good questions, and I've kind of got them figured out. And again, he knows how to communicate. But just before you go, Terry, I think Leah, do you have a question?
Yeah, just had a quick thought. How do you deal with a player that comes in with a ideal of how they're meant to have their golf swing looking? So I'm going to pick on my husband here. He plays off 5, and so I'm just going to laugh at this. But I also have a lot of counter players like this as well. He researches golf books, YouTubers like you wouldn't believe. And his quote is, I'm actually very knowledgeable about the golf swing, which obviously gets me a little bit on edge because that's a dangerous thing. How do you deal with a player who has this idea of what the golf swing should be, but actually doesn't really understand just the simple impact factors face to path relationship? Because what you're saying is very much how I think it makes sense. You've got different statures, different hand sizes, different grips, so therefore you're going to have these different swings, so cause and effect. So for me as a coach, it's never about like how it looks, it's what is the result, what's the ball flight doing, but how do you explain that to a player who has got this vision in their head of what it should look like?
Well, so I think you know, you can't fight that with information is the right way to start saying that. I think you know, Einstein gets a lot of quotes attributed to him, which are not necessarily probably his. Like, you know, the bigger the computer is, the better it works, sort of thing. Anyway, so he would say you have to change. You know, you have to solve something at the level in which it was coded. So if you get rid of all of his knowledge, he still wants to be a better golfer, right? So he's hitting certain shots, and his swing evolved on a you know, experiential level and not an informational level. I think the consequence of him not being as good a golfer as he would like to be made him do the research, but the research isn't what makes him what he is. His attributes as a golfer are. So I don't try and fight fire with fire first. I mean, you know, obviously the higher up the teaching chain you go, you actually have automatically some built-in rapport, which helps. People are predisposed to give you the benefit of the doubt and listen to you. So the first thing is understanding, you know, some of these people, you probably have to let them blow off their steam, tell you all the different things they're doing, and then you know, you watch them hit their balls or whatever, and they you know, they do something. So now the way we do it is, I said Mike Adams developed these tests. So we always test first, never guess. And then, as I said about with the kids, you can, so if his problem is, let's say, face control, and he has 17 different ways to cure it, depending on how neurotic that person is, you might have to let them show you their 17 first. So I just taught a tour player for the first time the other day, and I was a very intelligent guy. So I basically gave it the Detective Columbo. And, oh, that's interesting. Oh, show me that. Oh, interesting. Oh, did that work? No. All right, show me the other one. Okay, is that working? No, it does this. So if you actually, I mean, there's different ways to do it, and obviously that's a very, very big question. My short answer is we do it experientially. So if someone's having a problem hooking the ball, and you give them, you know, and we do a grip test, but basically if you give them just those one-handed swings and give them different feels, it's, well, if you grip it strong, what happens to the face? Oh, it flips over. Oh, really? That's interesting. Oh, okay. So if you move your grip like this, what happens? All right, you know, it does that. So you start, you know, very directly dealing with a thing that, obviously, to your point, affects face to path. So, and then you can do, you know, whatever aim changes or, you know, whatever. But I would always try and have them have an experience as opposed to try and change their mind. So, you know, for example, like trail hand grip has such a big effect on, you know, whether the way the ball flies. So, for example, let's say someone's hooking it and they have all this stuff going on. They come in with too strong a grip, they're hooking it. The only way they can not hook it is to hold on. I mean, it feels shitty, right, when you're playing shitty golf. So if you can give them liberation, if you grip it like this, it's not going to hook. You can release it as hard as you want. It's not going left. They'll be like, oh, it's hard to debate that, right? So at some point, if you just, you know, almost like do a series of experiences or drills and things like that, now you're not telling them something, because I think their brain is already full. You're organizing. And you have to listen to them very carefully, because if they have a 20 thing list, there's probably, you know, 5 things that are relevant. And you can say, you know, that third thing you said was actually pretty good. We can use that, but we need to throw away number 7 to 10. And, you know, there's that player, you know, Dustin Johnson does what you should do, but, you know, Nick Watney doesn't, or whatever it is, right? It's, so I would say that would be I mean, that's all coaching skill, right? And personalities, but, you know, sometimes you just got to let them blow it off. You know, so for your husband, you could potentially go to the range with him and have him show you each of those different things, and try and make it like a.
That would be terribly painful to let him do that.
Oh my God! Can you imagine giving him the opportunity to express all of his bad thoughts? And then you know, the problem is, you know, anyone can hit one in a row, but so that's kind of how I deal with it. So personally, you know, if people are very much like that, I just try and get them down to some kind of experience. You know, if they're hooking the shit out of it, and you weaken the right hand and put them on the downslope and say, try that thing you said. And you know, you just put them in a context where a good swing is rewarded, let's put it that way. So that would be my thing. But like I say, you know, we're trying to bypass the conscious brain as much as possible and give them experiences.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think that's what I want to try and do for him, is experience and try the different things, rather than just go in with, right, this week I've seen it's all about burning the wrist, and I've tried to get him to go, well, why are you doing that? What's that gonna achieve by having it looking like this? And he can never answer me. Exactly,
because you're his wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Next week's Under the Hat will be divorce lawyers.
What was that?
Next week's Under the Hat will be showcasing divorce lawyers.
Yeah, no, that's why you teach kids. Much easier.
Well, that's how we met. He took golf lessons, and that was when he was playing the best, when we weren't together. And then when we got married, it's all just gone wrong. He doesn't listen to me anymore. But I might try that tactic. Just let him.
He does. It's just you know, the hierarchy of needs has changed. But he should pick up his underpants and you know, clean the dishes. He also listens to you, you know. So, you know, there's only so many things. The golf swing became down that hierarchy of needs to fulfill a successful marriage.
Yeah.
Husband and wife, you should give them to Stuart. That's what you need to do. Husband and wives teaching each other is always a very interesting thing. That's actually a service that we as golf teachers provide is marriage intervention, because now the husband and wife don't have to teach each other.
Perfect. Well, Terry, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It's been great to hear about your journey, some of the research you've done, and what's going on, and, you know, kind of a lot of the reasoning behind it, and, you know, just lots of information for everybody to digest there and process. So it's been great for me personally to catch up with you after so many years, given the fact that we spent quite a bit of time together. It's been great to kind of catch up, Gavin, as well as always. Thank you. And we'll let you get to playing golf in in and around Pebble.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day.
It's a tough life.
Spanish Bay today by the ocean. It's nice. I wish you guys some fun getting out golfing here at the end of the month. Not used to because you're in Scotland, but
yeah,
all of our English compatriots probably very excited to. You know what's going to happen? There's going to be like a rainstorm for about a week at the start of April.
Thanks, Terry. Appreciate it.
So, see you guys.
No,
Thanks.
brilliant.
Thanks,
Terry,
Stuart.
thank
Thanks,
you.
Joan.
Bye.
Bye.